Alright guys, so here is what I found out. I had problems, massive problems at idle. It would seem to run perfectly fine during the warm-up period. Now what I mean by the warm-up period is until it hits 180 degrees Fahrenheit, 175, whatever the number is that our car calls for. So I would let it idle up to that point, and then it would start RPM quote hunting, and it would start doing its thing and going back and forth, and then I would get retarded crazy issues. Now, if you're running 1,000, it would kill your car 100%. Mine would go down to about a 9 air fuel, and it would sit there. Now, the lower the pressure I had, the lower the air fuel, or the higher the air fuel ratio, of course. So what's happening is when your car gets warm, it tries to go into closed loop. It's in open loop during warm up period. So now when it goes into closed loop, quote, when it hits 175 degrees, it's supposed to go to O2 control. Now, if your car cannot take out enough fuel, see what's happening is our computer freaks the fuck out because the injectors have a minimum flow rate at a specific RPM and a minimum cc per second. So now if we try to command take out more fuel, the computer itself, when it's in closed loop, is trying to take out crap tons of fuel that the O2 is seeing. Now it can't do that, so it freaks the fuck out and starts to go into protect mode, and it flashes back and forth between closed loop, open loop, closed loop, open loop, closed loop, open loop. And then what happens at that point is it goes into a default map, which is a secondary map that is installed on the factory computer. Now, even if you're a standalone, it's probably still hooked up to the factory computer, I'm assuming. And what it does is it goes into that limp mode map. Now, that limp mode map will no longer, your chip will, and your standalone will no longer drive fueling and other things like that to the car. And no matter how much fuel you take out, you won't be able to do anything because it's in a default map. Now, that being the case, what I did is how I figured this out is I actually tested every single sensor in the car, cam, crank, everything. The only two things I did to my car was put a new MAF in it and put new injectors in it. So I knew it had to be something with that. And that's what I ended up coming up with, is that the injectors I had a minimum flow rate of 800 RPM and 1.5 cc a second, when you need to have injectors that will run safely around 1.2 to 1.6 cc a second, and that do not have an RPM restriction. Now, as far as I know, the 1,000 IDs, they have an RPM restriction and a CC flow. I think their CC flow is 1.5 a second as well. So you have to raise your idle RPM to 800 to 1,000, and it will get rid of that problem. You also need to, the funny thing is for most people, just turning your air conditioner on will increase the RPM enough to make that happen.